Namaste, hello, adab. Welcome to the Time Slip Fest 2021 in an extremely interesting and delectable conversation ahead. All men should learn to cook. Whether you're a husband, father, single, you should start learning to cook. It will improve your health, your enjoyment of food, your financial situation, your social scene, and oh, you will also be able to feed yourself. So why not? But isn't it odd that a big part of the world still considers home cooking to be a woman's job? Whereas at the professional level restaurant kitchens, apart from few notable exceptions, it is mostly dominated by male. Only 6.1% men in India participate in household activities like cooking. 96% of professional kitchens have male chefs. Today, we try to delve deeper into the dilemmas, irony, and motive behind. Why should men cook? Why wouldn't men cook? Why men wouldn't want to cook? Joining us today on the panel are four very popular and people's favorite people with us. Welcome Ravinder Singh, Rana Safvi, Chef Shipra Khanna, and Chef Jayanandan Bhaskar.
Thank
Good to
you.
get a hello from Ravinder. Hello there.
Hi, Gina.
So,
Ravinder is a well-known author from India, considered to be the king of romance, a full-time author, storyteller, and runs a publishing venture named Black Ink. We'll find out from him whether he loves or hates cooking. But not so long ago, we did spot him making hash brown and breakfast smoothie on my yellow table with Chef Kunal Kapoor's. So there. Rana Safi, hello.
hi.
She's a writer, scholar, historian. Her writings are a repository on Indian culture, food, heritage, and age-old traditions. We look forward to have Rana share the rare stories from pages of history on men who cook. Shipra, hey there.
Hi.
Thank you for joining Shipra. Shipra is an Indian celebrity chef, restaurateur, author, and from winning the second season of Indian television show Master Chef, she has come a long way to become a household name in Indian food industry. It will be really exciting to hear from her stories from her humble kitchen to tales from mega professional setups she has worked with. भास्कर साहब आदाब. आप और हम दोनों ही लखनऊ से हैं तो अंदाजे आगाज कुछ तो अलग होना चाहिए. So happy that you're a part of this panel. Well, Jayanandan Bhaskar from MasterChef India Season 1 in 2010 to now being a successful chef has spent more than a decade in the hospitality industry. He, along with MasterChef Season 1's team, made Limca Book of Records for making the biggest chocolate eclairs cake. Mouth watering just to visualize the treat. Welcome, dear guests. So happy to have you on board. Ravinder, we would want to begin from you. See, people are impressed when you know how to cook. So, how many times have we seen a male celebrity get brownie points just because the fans have posted a cooking picture of his on Instagram? So, do you really think that men who cook add so much more to their lives? Do you also think that smart men who cook tend to impress more?
Well, let me begin this by saying this session is on why men should cook and they don't cook. And I'm intimidated by three women, and I think the only man here. So let me start on that very note. To answer your question, yes, uh, the culinary skills are, if a man is adept with them, you find a guy in the kitchen. It's so easy to impress the other gender. This I have not only seen, I have observed, and I wrote about them in my books. It so happened that this session happened, and I was like taken back by the whole topic of this session. But when I went back to my books, there was a very strong correlation to the male protagonist in my book actually wound the heart of the female protagonist just by the fact that he is so good at it, and not just the idea of him making, his perspective of making what he's making. Write Me a Love Story is my latest book, in which the guy invites the girl on a date and she asks which restaurant, and then he says, my kitchen, I'm going to make something for you. He's making pasta, they're having wine, and on that, the whole discussion takes off to a different level. Will You Still Love Me is one of my books in which the guy is in love with Ghar Ki Chai, which is so much me. The whole idea of him making the female protagonist look at the boiling water, which is so black with the tea dust, and him pouring the white milk and the black and the white fusing together and giving birth to brown. Those vapors. It's a very steamy romance, but what is happening on the burner is setting everything in perspective. So not only the fact that a guy is preparing a meal or a beverage, but the whole perspective to it. I see romance in it, something that I will make and give it to somebody else who I am fond of. So yeah, to answer your question, yes, but also with the perspective, another layer to that.
That's so beautifully put. And it's also all about independence and, focus on health efforts as well. So, all in all, it puts everything in place so perfectly for the protagonist of any novel and for men in general, of course. Well, hey, taking a cue from where Ravinder last left, Jayanandan, now you're a professional. But not so long ago, just about a decade ago, you were hardly like 24 something boy who went on to become a finalist in India's most coveted titles, MasterChef. And that almost got the news ticker rolling for us. I mean, at that tender age, who does that? So, what is the story behind you becoming proficient in culinary art? Not just learning it, but mastering the art at that tender age. We'd like to know.
Sure. Uh, Seriously, it's not easy because I'm come from Lucknow, and it's not a big city, and but this famous for its kebab, cuisine, culture, spices, no doubt. So कहीं ना कहीं वो जिसको कहते हैं ना कि आपके आपके जहन में बस जाती हैं चीजें और वो रूह में आ जाती हैं. तो कुकिंग भी कुछ ऐसा ही था. और सीरियसली अगर मैं कहूँ, माय फर्स्ट लव एंड माय फर्स्ट मैरिज, सो मैं कह सकता हूँ मेरी 2 मैरिज हुई हैं. और फर्स्ट लव जो था वो कुकिंग था और हमेशा रहेगा. सॉरी अगर मेरी वाइफ ने ये देखा तो मुझे कहीं ना कहीं सुनने को मिलेगा, बट नो डाउट कहते हैं ना कि आप कुछ चीजें करके कुछ चीजें बहुत अच्छी कर सकते. सो जो आज हमारा टॉपिक है और जिस तरीके से मैं देख रहा हूँ, मैन शुड बी कुक रियली. तो कहीं ना कहीं वो जो नाराजगी होगी वाइफ की वो मैं अपने खाने से दूर कर लूंगा, नो डाउट. और आज मैं ये चीज क्लियर भी कर दूंगा सबको कि मतलब आप कुछ भी कर लीजिए, कितनी गलतियां कर लीजिए, कोई मिस्टेक कर लीजिए, बट आप अपने दिल को बहलाने के लिए या किसी को बहुत ज्यादा उस तरीके से पैम्पर करने के लिए एक ही चीज कहीं ना कहीं काम आती है. एज अ शेफ ये चीज नहीं कह रहा हूँ, बट सीरियसली बिकॉज घूम के कहीं ना कहीं हम एक ही एंटरटेनमेंट पे आते हैं जो है फूड. सो सीरियसली खाने का कोई भी और कोई तोड़ नहीं है. सो या.
Coming to you, Rana. See, the Mughal period in India is known for its richness, opulence, and Mughal food has a history of over 500 years of scrumptious dishes. So you talk about Murg Musallam, Navratan Korma, Panchmel Dal, Nahari. The list is almost endless. Many Mughal emperors even had their own detailed cookbooks. But then we wonder, why were khansamas or house stewards in king's palaces mostly male? So what set that stereotype?
I loved what Ravinder had to say. And the
Thank
other
you.
thing is that the cooks were made because the kitchens would be separated. Now, you talked about the Mughals, Akbar had set a very efficient administrative machinery in place. And the kitchen was just as regulated as, say, the treasury or the revenue department. And we have very detailed descriptions of the imperial kitchen given in N.A. Akbari. So you had a Mir Bakawal who was in charge of the kitchen. You had people who would taste the food, and so everything was very, very detailed. And you had a hierarchy of chefs, just as you have today. So you had the Rakabdar who was the chef, and then you had Masalchis, etc., etc. It's a very long, detailed thing of list of people who cook. Now, the harem, as you know, was always separate. In any fort or any palace, there would be a public area and a private area, and the private area is where the ladies live. Now, from what I have read and I have translated a few books, there would be a separate kitchen for the ladies, for the Mahil Sara, but the food would be cooked in the main kitchen and then brought from there. Now, one of the reasons was also the danger of poisoning. So, since getting somebody introducing poison into the food was ever-present danger, food was cooked in one place. There was somebody who would taste it, and he had a very high position. And it would sometimes be either the Mir Bakabal or the Daroga, the superintendent of the kitchen, who would test. And then food would be sealed and then sent either to the emperor's table, or whether it was the emperor would often eat in the zanana. So if it went to the zanana, it would all be sealed, and the seals would be broken in front. Whether it was water, sharbat, or food, the seals would be broken once it was served in front of them. So it was such a highly specialized machinery that, and again, in India or anywhere else for that matter, patriarchy has always ruled that women do the free work and men do the paid work. If it's a professional work where you get, praise for your work, you get paid for it, it's normally, whether it is kitchen or what it is, the men. And, the women were supposed to do the cooking at home.
So when women do it, it is their duty, but when men do it, it is art, is it?
It is art. So again, as usual, it's a lot of things to do with, in history, are to do with patriarchy.
Get that. In fact, as per Mughal traditions, food formed a part of gift culture also and laid the rules for diplomatic etiquettes. So we totally get that. However, things needed a change and it has changed for good. And Shipra would be able to probably throw some more light on it. Although my first question to you, Shipra, is that, Sanjeev Kapoor's and Gordon Ramsay's of this world have become household names. And India, with its skyrocketing F&B sector, the female chefs make up to only 3.5% of the workforce. When culinary schools and hotel management institutes in India send graduates, the proportion is 50-50, male is to female. However, when it comes to work setup, it is absolutely skewed. Men take over the kitchen, and women, they take to different fields of culinary, for instance writing or catering or baking. So why do you think this skewness happens?
Our author, Ms. Rana, she said that, it's a patriarchal society. I think this is followed everywhere. And it's, gender bias is something which is, it's something that, it's over a period of time, we have been trying to fight it out, and trying to make that case for women and, gender equality. So when I won MasterChef, it was the same thing. There were no women chefs that existed. So it was very, very difficult for me to even, make that, because the thing did not exist. There was no female chef who was like really out there and doing everything that the male chefs are doing, especially in professional kitchens. So when I was working or opening up restaurants, and I would find no female at all, which was kind of very surprising. And not only in India, but outside, yes, you would find females, but in India, it was like you would never find a woman working in the kitchen. There were always men. And you would wonder why, because, you always, like you said, that, women at home are always cooking, but men are never cooking at home. They cook when they're paid for. So they're always working in the kitchen, in restaurants, in hotels. So it is kind of, I think, something that we have been, it's become a norm that we followed all the way through, and it's just like somebody had to break the rules. How everybody is like, you set the rule. I mean, you feel that it's a rule, this is the way it's being followed, and nobody wants to make that change. But that change, I think, after a point of time in life becomes really, really important. And it comes about like this way or that. Somebody or, even a single person can bring about that change.
Correct. And thank you to all of you women icons in the food industry who have broken the stereotype and are trailblazers in your own field. So thank you for being you. Jayanandan, when it comes to professional kitchen, despite that women have they have an upper hand in the domestic kitchen. When it comes to professional kitchen, it is usually the male who dominate it. So what do you think gives men a sustainable edge when you talk of it professionally? क्या है अलग?
अकॉर्डिंग टू मी, अगर मैं इस चीज को डीपली मैंने जो एनालाइज किया है अभी तक इन माय करियर, so I work with so many branded hotel like Leela, Hyatt, Wyndham Group, Ramada, Golf Course, but कहीं ना कहीं मुझे एक चीज जो मिसिंग लगी, अगर आप देखें तो पेस्ट्री शेफ्स आपको लेडीज मिल जाएंगी, बिकॉज ये काफी एक सॉफ्ट, एक आप कह सकते हैं सॉफ्ट सेक्शन है कुकिंग का। और बट ये चीज इंडिया में है, अगर इंटरनेशनली अगर मैं इस चीज को कहूँ तो मैंने कई सारे मतलब इवेंट्स किए हैं, इंडिया को रिप्रेजेंट किया है और हमेशा करता आया हूँ, नो डाउट, और करता रहूंगा। सो बट ये कहीं ना कहीं मुझे इंडिया में मिसिंग है। बट ओवरऑल अगर मैं देखूं तो ये चीज नहीं है, कहीं ना कहीं इस चीज को हम कह सकते हैं, बट मुझे कहना नहीं चाहिए एज मतलब एक अच्छा भारतीय होने के नाते और इंडियन होने के नाते। ये हमारा एक थॉट प्रोसेस है कि हम सिर्फ और सिर्फ इस तरीके से देखते हैं कि घर में किचन जो है वो लेडीज का है और प्रोफेशनली जो है वो शेफ्स जो है मेंस का। बट मेंस ठीक है, अच्छा कुक करते हैं, नो डाउट, बट ऐसा नहीं है कि वुमेन्स उतना अच्छा कुक नहीं कर सकती हैं प्रोफेशनल किचन। बट उस तरीके से कभी बढ़ावा दिया नहीं है वुमेन्स, जहां तक मुझे लगा ये चीज। तो मैं हमेशा इस चीज को पुश करता हूँ कि मेरी किचन में स्पेशली बस जब भी मैं ये चीज देखता हूँ ना कि जब मेरी टीम होती है, जो भी मेरा स्पेशल किचन होगा या जब भी मैं कुछ लॉन्च कर रहा होता हूँ रेस्टोरेंट, तो मैं इस चीज का मतलब हर तरीके से ख्याल रखता हूँ कि हाफ और हाफ सेक्शन में डिवाइड रखूँ, 50% लेडीज हो और 50% जेंट्स। बट उससे कहीं ना कहीं आपका काम करने का जो एक नजरिया है ना बहुत चेंज होता है, हर तरीके से आपको थॉट्स बड़े अच्छे मिलते हैं। बिकॉज जरूरी नहीं है कि हम मेंस होके उतना अच्छी चीजें सोच सकें जितना लेडी सोच रही है। प्लेटिंग में बहुत ज्यादा फर्क आ जाएगा, खाने में बहुत ज्यादा फर्क आ जाएगा, स्पाइसेस में तड़कों में बड़ा फर्क आ जाएगा। तो ये चीज मैं हमेशा कहूंगा कि जरूरी नहीं है कि सिर्फ और सिर्फ मेंस ही अच्छा कुक कर सकते हैं प्रोफेशनल किचन में, ऐसा नहीं। इवन एक मेरी शेफ थी, मुझे आज याद भी है उनके बारे में, और हमेशा मतलब मेरे साथ टच पे रहती है, शेफ सब शबाना, वो भी लखनऊ से ही है।
अच्छा।
तो उन्होंने मेरे लिए हमेशा बहुत अच्छा कुक किया, अच्छा परफॉर्म किया, नो डाउट। और मतलब मुझे कभी ये फील नहीं हुआ कि एक काम जो मेरा एक नॉर्मल शेफ कर सकता है वो एक लेडी शेफ नहीं कर सकता, कभी नहीं। इवन अगर मैं ये बात करूं यूटेंसिल्स, हैवी यूटेंसिल्स के बारे में, और नॉर्मल मतलब कोई भी, जैसा आपको लगता है ना कि ये सिर्फ और सिर्फ एक आदमी कर सकता है, बट ऐसा नहीं, सीरियसली, नो डाउट। और एक चीज और मैं ये कहना चाहूंगा कि जब हम कुक करते हैं कोई भी डिश को, जब हम कुक कर रहे होते हैं तो हमारा जो थॉट प्रोसेस होता है ना बचपन से ही, और जब भी हम प्रोफेशनली, मैं किचन की बात कर रहा हूँ, तो कहीं ना कहीं वो हमारे जहन में, हमारे माइंड में हमेशा रहता है कि मेरी मदर इस तरीके से कुक किया करती है। तो वो आप कैसे भी कुछ कर लीजिए, वो चीजें जा नहीं सकती, और ये हमेशा रहेगा, सीरियसली।
और रहना भी चाहिए, शायद इसी से वो जायका जो है थोड़ा सा और बढ़ जाता है और मजेदार बन जाता है। तो बहुत शुक्रिया, दैट वाज अ बैंग ऑन आंसर। आई मीन ऐसे ही बेबी स्टेप्स में शायद ये चेंज आएगा और आ रहा है, आ रहा है।
नो डाउट।
We come back to Ravinder. Ravinder, we are no longer in the age where men go out to work and women stay home to do all the cooking. So it's time for men to put the apron on, if we were to put it across. But when man of the house is a home dad, or say a stay-at-home parent, and opts to cook daily for the family, he is made to feel ashamed of it. So why is our society still not prepared to accept men in the kitchen as a regular cooking in a regular cooking regime? Why is that?
There's always an inertia that comes into play the moment you want to change something out there. And let me tell you, this inertia comes from the previous generation. Even if, let's say, my generation or a friend of mine, I land up at his house and if he's cooking, to me it's a change, it's a new thing. I love the fact, but I also get to know how the parents talk, and the parents of a son, for example, would talk, oh my god, the whole Indian culture for that matter, mera beta agar rasoi mein kaam kar raha hai, it's like you are going back to a stone age, in one point. Like, so what is this whole education was about? Sadly, nobody asks this question when it's about women. Also, let me tell you, the resistance I have seen is also coming from women folk. I was in the gym, I was talking, like they have, and I'm not putting a blame on, a particular gender, and I know I'll be quoted, or the man on that particular panel landed up putting it on, but I have seen this. It's twofold. I was in the gym, and I used to go to the gym between 10 to 4 wala time period, because I work out of my home. I have my own business, so I can afford. And I was next to me was this lady who was on the treadmill, and I was having conversation that I asked, "What do you do?" And then she said, "I don't do anything." And I said, "How do you pass your entire day then?" She said, "I have a lot of things to do. I have to raise my children. I cook meal." I said, "Then why did you tell me that you don't do anything?" This whole mindset thing कि मुझे ही अपने हाथ से अपने पति को खाना बनाना और खिलाना है. Like there is this whole embedded thing out there. We have stereotyped this for good, but it is becoming slightly a point which is now brushing it off. कि माँ के हाथ का खाना. You look at the whole marketing. There are products, there are food delivery apps who are actually telling that हम आपके लिए माँ के हाथ का खाना लेके आएंगे. This is so hard coded in our DNA. It is going to take a lot of time. Kudos to those brands who are actually making an effort and telling that even the man of the house can actually wash clothes. With this particular washing powder, this is what we want to talk about. Of course, we are talking about should men cook or not, but I'm talking in general about so many things that men can do. Of course, if the man of the house doesn't cook a great meal, no matter how much he has tried, no matter how much he wants, in those scenarios, perfectly fine for the woman to take the lead. It's about dividing responsibilities. The shame somehow is ingrained in the very, it's very societal conditioning, and also the fact that we really need to make heroes out of people who have broken those. We don't celebrate them enough. The day we celebrate them enough is when we would like to become like them. Today, these arguments only come up in such panel discussions. But we need to go beyond these panel discussions and make it so usual that we are not surprised to see कि अच्छा तुम खाना बनाते हो, like बड़ा अच्छा बनाते हो. So that is the whole thing that we need to do, I think.
So correct. You were absolutely on the point. And in fact, sometimes I feel that it is our generation, the millennials or the Generation X, who have actually created the mess. And hopefully the Gen Z and the Gen Alpha, I hope they make the corrective action and put everything in place back. Coming back to you, Rana. See, historically, too, professional kitchens have been male dominated. We have already talked about it. And according to the military history, during times of war in the 14th and 15th century, men in army were expected to cook. So gradually, this trend culminated into a military style of hierarchical structure in professional kitchen. A little of it is still visible in some modern setups. So what do you have to say on that?
Before I come to that, I'd like to comment on what Ravinder said. As the oldest oldest member of this panel, I'd like to say that I've taught my son and my son-in-law both. My daughter is a vegan, and I'm a very good non-vegetarian cook of what we say non-veg meat dishes. So all my dishes, traditional dishes that I have learned through the years from my grandmother, etc., I'm passing them on to my son and my son-in-law, and they are the ones who cook. And my son does most of the cooking in his home, and my son-in-law and my daughter, they share the cooking between them. So this is something, as he said, it is something that we have to change, our generation. And so I'm doing my bit by passing on my recipes to them. And to come back to your question about armies. Now, the kingdoms, the medieval kingdoms, even the ancient kingdoms, especially the medieval kingdoms, whether it was the Sultanate or the Mughals or any other of the provincial regional sultanates, all of them had long military campaigns. If we talk about the Mughals, their campaigns would last for years. We've heard so many times that, they were on the march for years and years. So now when you have an army on the march for say a year or 2 years, it has a huge paraphernalia. It doesn't only have soldiers, it has a whole lot of camp followers. So the kitchen is also part of that, because an army, as Napoleon said, marches on its stomach. Now, no, it's not only the cooks who are involved, but in the Mughal kitchens and in the other kitchens as well, traditional kitchens, I'm talking of huge setups, there would be hakims and vets also involved. Because certain food, just as today, like when we used to live in Pune and I visited the NDA, and I was told that the food that is given to the cadets is, measured in terms of how many calories, protein, calorific intake, etc., etc. That was something that was done even in then. So the hakims and the vets would be very involved in what the food had to be served, for whether it was, times of peace, times of war, going for hunts, whatever, etc., etc. So these people were involved, the cooks were involved, and being on the march for so long, it was not possible for a woman to be a cook. Many of the cooks would be having their own families, but then the lady would be cooking only for the man. She would be doing, while he cooked for the emperor, she probably cooked for him. And even when we have the British East India Company and they have their own armies, the soldiers were given dry rations. We have here a very strict, we had in those days strict caste restrictions also. Most of the soldiers of the East India Company army were upper caste and upper class. So they would be given dry rations, which they would cook themselves. And so again, it's men who are cooking, unless some of them had families with them where the wife would be cooking. I recently started reading this book called The Muslim Soldiers of Dunkirk. It's by Guy Bowman. It's a new book that has come out. It's a wonderful book on life of these soldiers when they went to Dunkirk. They were captured, they were taken as prisoners of war. Now, what is interesting to me is the people who went, they all sailed from here to France. And the people who went included people who would sharpen the knives. Now, since you had a whole contingent of Muslim soldiers, you also had to have somebody who could do the meat in the halal way. So, people, the Bashalchis, everybody is going, somebody to nail to shoe the horse. So, when all these people are going and they're sailing from here, it's not possible for the women to go. So, this is something that is very, very, again, it's patriarchal also. It is also the way societal norms that there are, that women can't, you can't. Nowadays, of course, I see a lot of women into male-dominated jobs, which were male-dominated. And I'm so happy to hear Shipra and doing what she's doing. But professions which were perceived earlier as male-dominated, it was difficult for women to make their life there. So that hierarchy that was there was, very, very rigid, not only in terms of gender, but in terms of what they had access to and how they were paid also.
That is so wonderfully put. And we can totally understand why this hierarchy actually became inevitable. It had to seep in. And okay, so that brings me to the question to ask Shipra something. Shipra, taking from where Rana last left, let's talk about hierarchy in the kitchen. The working in a professional kitchen involves long, grueling hours, like Rana also emphasized in yesteryears. Sometimes late into the night, also, work life balance was almost an impossibility. In today's setup, what is the kind of pressure inside professional kitchen that gives an edge to men? So we'd like to know the insider story from you. Have you come across a toxic environment in the kitchen when there is mansplaining or boy clubs within the kitchen setup?
Okay, so actually, I would like to share an incident with all of you. So I was, kickstarting a restaurant in Delhi, and so I was interviewing the chefs and taking them on board, doing the trials and everything. And there comes a chef who was, my team was really, really young, but there was this chef who was old. I mean, he was aged, and of course, hence more experienced. That's what you would say, right? And of course, he came with a whole setup like, women are to be at home and cook, and men cook in the kitchen, and there just should be men in the kitchen. And he was not expecting a woman boss, who's going to be like taking his test, interrogating his food, and commenting on it and all that. He was a very good chef, and he just could not, he could not make peace with the fact that I was there to judge his food. And he's like, firstly, a younger girl, and then she's taking my test. I've been cooking for years. All my life I've spent in kitchens and restaurants and, this and that. And he was so offended just by my presence. And I was like, I didn't say anything. He was like, he was good, but he was, I was doing a menu which was not necessarily his cooking style, but nonetheless, he was a good chef, but he was so offended that, I have a female boss. Luckily, I have, and of course, I travel a lot and do a lot of pop-ups internationally as well and do a lot of menus. And I definitely promote girls to come on board, whether it's patisserie or whether it's the main kitchen. And, one thing is there that, the utensils when you're cooking in a kitchen, and especially if you're doing a menu, the utensils and everything, like the equipment is very, very heavy. So you need male, men to lift it or hold it or change it or whatever, So for that kind of thing, but there's nothing that a woman cannot do, I have, I do a lot of, I push girls to get into hospitality because it's a beautiful sector to be in. And it's really, really amazing. You can really learn a lot, grow a lot. So now I see the change. Now I see the change in men, like Ravinder said. And, the parents are okay with men cooking and guys are like more independent. People have like, I think digitization has really helped us open up to the world. So in the first world, you see guys cooking all the time. It's like women really don't, it's not like, oh, she's a woman and she has to cook or, it's equality, right? So it's now I think people who are educated and more exposed and they really like, they're fine with like, I have people who are just hosting dinners and barbecues and, brunches and only the men are cooking, which is perfectly fine. And, it's not seen as, I think this generation doesn't see it like, oh my God. But yeah, prior to us, maybe the grandparents or parents, some parents, and depending which city you are in, where you're living, and all of that as well. And of course, education and exposure to the world. But yes, in the main kitchen, you see very, very few girls, but it's changing, and I'm really happy with the change because it's really empowering. In fact, I know the topic is not empowerment, but women empowerment is actually about women supporting another woman. It's not about women showing a man down. But people don't understand it. They would always like say that, men this, and I'm like, women empowerment is not about that. So if you are in a position, luckily I have been in a position where I'm taking trials of the chefs, but if there is one girl in the entire kitchen, of course, in India, it is, even talking to the girl, some chefs would not talk because she would take it wrong or it would be looked at otherwise. So they would be shy and things, not necessarily that they're bullying her or something. But yeah, of course, being a woman in the chef and if you're alone, you would probably not take up the job because there's like all men around. Not like, they're not being nasty or rude or whatever. It's a job, but she would just not be comfortable and neither would they be comfortable because, then if men are together, they want to crack their own jokes and they have like a lingo that they follow. And with a woman around, it's not the same. So yeah, it's different. But outside, internationally, yeah, you see a lot of girls in the kitchen.
So thank you for sharing that insider story with us. Yes, Ravinder, you want to say something? Please pitch in.
Yeah, to add to what Rana said and the way Shipra brought an incident, and because we are talking about men cooking and I write romance, let me also give an insight of how I landed up in kitchen at the very first place. My upbringing has been in a gurudwara. My dad is a priest. I used to be a Sikh and religious person till one point of time. So I have always seen the langar being made. Early morning, my dad would make that kada prasad for gurudwara. That's how my morning would begin. I was in class 10th when my mom fell sick and she was supposed to be operated. And at home, as Rana mentioned, she had two sons and a daughter who's vegan. In my family, it was me and my brother, just two people. And I was the elder one. I am the elder one. So when my mom fell sick, And my dad knows how to cook. Just that he makes edible food. He doesn't make the tasty food. And he will make the chapatis so thick. जैसे वो लंगरों में मिल रही होती है ना वैसे वाली. So and I was like, okay, मैं लंगर की चपाती रोज नहीं खा सकता. I will have to do something. So I picked up the dough and started knitting and made out of it. My mom had taught me bare minimum things. So I kind of build upon that. Eventually, I landed up in Belgium for my work, for my very first job. And I realized that on the third day, I was crying. Literally, this is 2005. This is the time where there was no MasterChef, no YouTube. YouTube didn't exist. So you cannot look and make. And I was like, and the population in Belgium doesn't even speak English. They either speak Dutch or French. So I would actually enter a restaurant and they were supposed to close and they are talking in French. And I would say, give me number 3. So imagine entering a McD or, Subway and saying that, give me number 3. And then I'm eating something. A friend of mine walks in and he asked me, Ravinder, since when did you start eating beef? Now, not that I do not eat beef for the religious thing, but I just didn't like the taste of it. But I realized, okay, is this beef? Is this because I'm not enjoying it? And I started crying. Imagine 25-year young boy crying that मुझे घर का खाना चाहिए. And then I asked my mom, please tell me the basics. How can I make more things? So she dictated my brother on a Word document he typed. He then put that Word document in a floppy, went to an internet cafe and sent me on email कि अगर राजमा छोले माँ की दाल बनानी है तो रात को भिगो के रखो, तड़का ऐसे लगाना है, सब्जियां ऐसे. It became my Bible. So, and 3 months down the line, I started becoming somebody who would host parties. Now, because I'm writing romance, let me tell you, men struggle to walk up to women. But imagine you reverse the game. कि मेरे घर पे young women are coming and then say रविंद्र आज गोभी का पराठा खिला दे. And I know कि गोभी के पराठे के अंदर अगर मैं अदरक ग्रेट करके, so I'm giving you then कुछ छोटी-छोटी चीजें to woo, and it woos their heart like to a different level altogether. I didn't know कि ऐसा होगा, but them telling me कि तूने आलू के पराठे में क्या डाला है, मैंने कहा इसमें ना अनार दाना डाला है. So I started enjoying the attention that I was getting. You change the whole thing. It's not about the male ego. कि अच्छा आदमी की जगह किचन में नहीं है. You change the whole perspective. If I do this, now my couple friends who would come, the male friends would hate me कि तूने ना आते खराब कर दिया हमारी wife. वो कह रही कि यार रविंदर की तरह कुछ करके देखो. So I'm not praising myself, but I'm just trying to show the other side of the world. If you land up doing this, it just works wonderfully.
Ravinder, because you shared your story, do you think men must cook to build a happy marriage? Simple.
Not must. They should take responsibilities in either way. Not just अगर वो अच्छा खाना नहीं बना सकते, there is no reason they should be punishing their spouses कि बस केना ने कहा था उस दिन हम ये करेंगे. Take responsibilities. It could be anything apart from cooking also.
Perfect. Coming to you, Rana. Rana, menstruating women were required to seclude themselves in yesteryears, in days long gone, and they were not even allowed to visit the temple, the granary, the feast, or enter the kitchen. Do you think menstruation would have been one of the reasons why women couldn't foray into professional kitchen?
Professional cooking, I think, was more to do with patriarchy. And as far as menstruation is concerned, they were cooking at home, and there were joint families in the past, and there would always be some other women who would go and cook. So I don't think that menstruation came in the way of their becoming professional cooks, because I have not heard of any professional setup where this is an obstacle. But yes, in homes and for puja food, etc., yes, it is. But then again, you have somebody who takes your place.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We come to Shipra. Shipra, how can we make professional kitchen a gender agnostic place?
It is a gender agnostic place. It's just that women have to step up and, take up the challenge and just go for it. There's nothing that is holding you back.
जयनंदन, क्योंकि आप भी लखनऊ से हैं और मेरे दिल का भी एक बहुत बड़ा टुकड़ा लखनऊ में ही बसता है. So I need to ask you, how much of Lucknow do you carry in your food? कितना लखनऊ अपने साथ लेकर चलते हैं और आपके खाने में वो दिखता है?
तो मैं ये चीज एक जरूर कहूंगा कि कहीं ना कहीं जब मैंने स्टार्ट किया था, when I start my career, my first mentor is my chef Kunal Kapoor, no doubt, professionally. And उससे पहले अगर मैं देखूं, because कहीं ना कहीं हर एक इंसान की एक जर्नी ना कहीं एक ड्रीम से शुरू होती है, एक सपने से शुरू होती है. तो मेरा भी कुछ ऐसा ही था, और आई एम वेरी पैशनेट अबाउट कुकिंग, बिकॉज लखनऊ में रह के वो चीजें तो आई जाती हैं आपके अंदर, और खाने और खिलाने का जो शौक था उसको मैंने अपने चीजों में रखा, बरकरार रखा. और अपनी मेरी फर्स्ट मेंटोर जो मैं कहूँगा, प्रोफेशनली नहीं, वो मेरी मदर थी. काफी कुछ मैंने उनसे कुक करना सीखा, बेसिक जो थी मेरे क्लियर्स हुए. माय सेकंड मेंटोर इज माय फादर, because he is a pure non-vegetarian guy and my mother is pure vegetarian. So yeah, अब कहीं ना कहीं वो कल्चर खो गया है. So कहीं अब जो हम बात करने वाले हैं या कर रहे हैं जिस टॉपिक पे कि फूड किस तरीके से कनेक्ट करता है, तो जरूरी नहीं है कि सिर्फ और सिर्फ हस्बैंड वाइफ या गर्लफ्रेंड और बॉयफ्रेंड की बात कर रहा हूँ, या एक आप कहें आप मदर और बेटे की बात करें, ऐसा नहीं है. खाना सच में रिलेशन को डेवलप करता है, एक बहुत अच्छी बॉन्डिंग देता है. और ये चीज कहीं ना कहीं मेरे और मेरे फादर के साथ है. बिकॉज अगर आप देखें तो नॉर्मली हर एक फैमिली में जो उनके हेड हैं वो काम कर रहे होंगे, और बच्चों का कहीं ना कहीं कनेक्शन बहुत ज्यादा मदर से होता है
जी.
बट ये चीज मैं नहीं कहूंगा, बिकॉज सैटरडे और संडे का हमेशा हम वेट करते हैं, जस्ट बिकॉज कि फादर के साथ कुकिंग करनी है और नॉनवेज कुक करनी है. तो ही इज माई सेकेंड मेंटोर, नो डाउट. And I learned lots of recipes and tricks how to cook mutton dishes, chicken, egg, everything, no doubt. So कहीं ना कहीं एक चीज की फाइट हमेशा रहती थी मदर एंड फादर के बीच में कि शी इज अ प्योर वेजिटेरियन एंड ही इज अ प्योर नॉन वेज गाय. तो हमारी किचन जो थी, वो किचन सेटअप जो था वो टेरेस था बेसिकली. सो वी हैव वेरी डिफरेंट एंड अदर सेटअप फॉर नॉन वेज. एंड वेज के लिए तो मदर की किचन है ही है, नो डाउट. सो ये चीजें बड़ी मजा देती थी. और ये चीज हम देखते थे बचपन में कि खाने से वेज खाने को पका के फादर मदर को कैसे मनाते हैं. तो नो डाउट ये रिलेशन जो है ना खाने का, कहीं ना कहीं ये मुझे और मेरे फादर को जोड़ता था, मदर और फादर को जोड़ता था. बहुत अमेजिंग, सीरियस. इवन ड्यूरिंग द लॉकडाउन हमने इस चीज को समझा है और बहुत अच्छे से देखा है कि कहीं ना कहीं हम मतलब ज्यादातर यही होता है कि आज भी अगर मैं देखूं तो 50% जो है फैमिलीज में जेंट्स काम कर रहे होते हैं और लेडीज हाउसवाइफ होती है. बट ये एक टाइम ऐसा था कि जेंट्स को नो डाउट कुकिंग बहुत पसंद है. मैंने हर अपने कुकिंग सेशंस में देखा है, वर्कशॉप्स में देखा है, वो अटेंड जिस तरीके से करते हैं, चीजें देखते हैं, समझते हैं. तो उनको अब ये मौका मिला था लॉकडाउन के टाइम में कि वो अपना हर तरीके से हुनर दिखा सके या कुकिंग कर सके. बिकॉज बहुत ज्यादा पसंद करते हैं कुकिंग करना, मैं ऐसा नहीं है. और सिर्फ मतलब ये होता है ना कि घर में लेडीज ही कुक करेगी. तो वो लॉकडाउन के टाइम में कहीं ना कहीं उनको आराम मिला और जेंट्स ने बहुत अच्छा काम किया. सीरियसली इस चीज के लिए मैं भी बहुत अप्रिशिएट करूंगा हर एक उस इंसान को जिसने अपनी वाइफ, अपनी मदर, अपनी सिस्टर के लिए खाना बहुत दिल से बनाया.
जी, बिल्कुल बिल्कुल सही बात है. So this was it, the session which not just centered around feast for the mind, but also feast for the soul. Because at the end of the day, food is about love. Food is about sharing. Food is about connecting all of us together. Thank you so much, Ravinder, Rana, Shipra, and Bhaskar. It was amazing to have all of you. And a big shout out and thank you to the entire teams of Time Plate Fest and to everybody who joined us in this session, watching this session. And stay connected. Let us connect with each other over food and lots of conversations. Until we meet next time, tata, take care from this side. Bye-bye.